Welcome to Where There's the Wheels.
There's the play.
I'm Ian, your Make a Betsy casual gamer.
I'm Stacey, I'm your non-gamer gamer.
And we are here with another 5 and Dime for Fridays. So last week we kind of finished up our series of mechanics videos, game mechanisms. I think we had like 9 of them or something. I was kind of surprised with that we had so many different ones that we could actually go through. And we were trying to figure out where we wanted to go next, and we decided we were going to go with years. Now, we got into the hobby about 8-ish years ago. I was kind of looking back to see if I could figure out like when the earliest thing we ordered online was, and I knew we had some games before that, and so I think it was about 8-ish years ago we kind of got into the hobby, and they got bigger into the hobby about 5 years ago. So these first 2 videos in this series are going to be a large range of years because we just don't have enough to do individual years, but we have enough games in these ranges. So this first one is games that came out pre-2015. And then we're going to go into 2015 through 2018, I think. And then in 2019 is when we really got big into it. And so 2019, 2020, and that's when we're going to kind of go into individual years. So with that being said, I will give a couple little stats here. We have 3 games on this list that did win the Spiel des Jahres, and 1 that won the Kinderspiel. So this list, even though these are older games and we don't have a ton that we've played kind of in any individual, we got 4 that are like big award-winning games for this. So let's get on to our list. My first game is a game that comes to us from one of our favorite board game companies. We've talked about this one in some different videos, and this comes to us from Camera-Elgato Games, and this is Cover Your Assets, and this one came out in 2011. In Cover Your Assets, you are basically making pairs. These pictures are much different than the ones we have access to. I don't know if this is an older version, but basically what you're trying to do is you are making asset. You are collecting pairs and putting them offset from each other to earn the most money. And when you do this, you take a pair from either your hand or one from your hand and one off the discard pile, and you put them down and you cover the previous assets, hence the name Cover Your Assets, because the top asset can be stolen from you. So you can see that bank account, the home, or the jewels in those 3 players' hands. Those could be stolen if someone had that card and laid it down. Now you can block them by laying the same card down. There's also some wilds, and then at that point that pile gets much larger. If you were to lay a second pair of bank accounts on that top left pile, you would have to offset it because it is considered a different asset. But if you go back and forth trying to steal and bet with each other or try to see who can steal it, then it does become quite a large pile. So it can become quite a large pile of cards in time if people are trying to steal it back and forth. This one we have access through my board game club at school, and we just really love it, and the kids at school really like it too. So this one is really good for all ages, and that is Cover Your Assets by Camera-Elgato Games. The next one comes to us from another one of our favorite companies. This is one that we own. We now own the 3rd edition, I believe, of it. I think we've had the 2nd and 3rd edition, and this comes to us from Underdog Games, and this is Trekking in the National Parks, and this one came out in 2014. So in Trekking the National Parks, this has some mechanics that are very similar to a Ticket to Ride type game, where you have cards that you're moving and cards that you're doing some other things with. So in Trekking the National Parks, you are moving around the country using the numbers on the cards on the bottom of the screen to move spaces. Wherever you finish, you get to take one of those stones. Then when you land on certain spots, you can visit national parks by taking the national park in your hand. You use the colors or the symbols on the cards in order to that each one has a certain number of symbols that you have to have. Then there's also some that are I don't remember what they're called, like major parks. And what those are is those allow you to camp and you get some special abilities. Maybe you can move in extra space. Maybe you spend a little less for something. So at the end of the game, you add up your totals. Everybody can camp at the 3 major parks, but you can only one person can collect each other park. And so at the end of the game, what you do is you add up your total on your parks that you've collected or you visited, the total on the parks that you camped at, as well as each person counts up how many of each color token they have. The top 2 people in each get a certain number of points. And then you add up your total, and that is trekking the national parks. All right.
My games I usually do in alphabetical order, and so I have a variety of games that I'm going to be recommending for everybody today. And so my first question, since I have all of your attention, I hope, is name 5 breeds of dogs in 5 seconds. Go! Okay. Not as easy as it sounds, is it? Um, so my first one is 5 Second Rule by Play Monster. Came out in 2010. And basically, it's just naming things in 5 seconds. You have different cards that you are playing against. That little yellow thing is your timer, and it makes a woo noise.
It makes a really distracting, annoying noise.
Extremely distracting noise as you're trying to come up with things. Anything from breeds of dogs to just anything. Name 5 car parts on your car.
You're naming 3.
Oh, 3. Sorry.
Still, naming 3 in 5 seconds is not any easier.
You've got people staring at you. You've got people laughing at you. You've got people ignoring you as you're trying to come up with these things. And so it's not as easy as it sounds. In some of the categories, you're just like, I wouldn't be able to name that in 30 minutes, let alone 5 seconds. So continue on. But whoever collects the most cards at the end of the round or at the end of the game is the winner.
Yeah, it's
hard.
It's much harder than it would seem. To name 3 things in 5 seconds seems like a really easy. Oh, I can name 3 things, but being put on the spot with that pressure and having that little marble going down that timer thing, making this really high pitched whistling noise, really almost distracts you.
Bless you.
Yeah. So it's a really fun party game.
It's nice, clean fun. It's fast paced.
Clean fun depending on who you play with. With us, it's clean fun, but
some of the categories you could
probably
get pretty obscure with some of them.
Yeah,
so that's all I have to say about that. But it's a good game. I like 5 Second Rule. It's definitely one of those games that I insist on playing every New Year's for our New Year's Eve extravaganza.
Yes, when we just play games, all fun, silly games on New Year's Eve.
Yes, 5 Second Rule.
All right,
highly recommend.
That is a fun one. That is a fun, silly one. All right, my next one is a junior version of a very classic game. I've never played the classic game. I believe the classic game was a Spiel winner. I don't know off the top of my head. This one is another one that we have access to through my board game club at school. I really enjoy playing at school. And this is Catan Junior from Catan Studios, which came out in 2011. So in Catan Junior, you are pirates that are trying to explore this land. Each person has a starting point around the board. You put one of your layers as well as a pirate ship on one of the dashed lines, and then you roll dice, and then you each start with some resources, and there's more resources over on the market side. You roll dice, and if you are next to one of the islands that has that number is on, you get that resource. So each island has different resources that are available to you. And so like if you were the blue player and someone rolled the number 1, you could get a log because you have one layer next to it. If you have more than one layer next to it, you get more than one of it. So the orange player up top would get 3 sheep, and they would actually get 2 of the barrels because they've got 2 layers next to the barrel, the number 2 if someone rolled a 2, but they have 3 layers next to the number 1 with the sheep, so they would get those. Then what you do is you use those to you use the resources to put more ships down and more layers down. You can also get some little tokens, which are the poly cards. It's a parrot, and those give you some more things. You can trade in any of the tokens, any of the resources that are on the shop right now on the shop side, you can trade them one for one. But if you want something that's not there, you have to actually return 3 things to get one, I believe it is. And if you have the most poly tiles, I think it's poly, you can put a layer in the middle on the skull island, which gives you an extra one. The winner is the first person to get all of their layers put onto the map. There's some good blocking in this game. There's some good strategies in this game. If you get to move, if you roll a 6, you get to move the pirate captain. And what that does is that blocks off a section. So you can see the pirate captain is in the upper left of the board right now. So if that number is rolled, even though the red player looks like has 5 layers around that island, they would get nothing because that pirate captain is blocking that. So this is a really fun game. I really enjoy this one. I've never played Catan. I do have it at my board game club. It's just not one that we've gotten out yet. But I really love playing Catan Junior with the kids, and I think it's just a really fun one overall. So that is Catan Junior. The next one is a Kinderspiel winner, and this one is a game we own. It's one of our earlier games that we own, and this is about finding your way through a labyrinth, but the labyrinth is hidden. And this is called Magic Labyrinth by Playroom, and this came out in 2009. So in Magic Labyrinth, you're seeing the top of the board. What you can't see is underneath this board before the game starts, you put in walls all over it. You put in walls all over it, and then you put it down on here, and then you spin it around so you can't see the walls. So you can't see where the walls are. And then on top, you are trying to get to different areas to collect little tokens. You roll the dice to see how many spaces you get to move. What you can see is underneath the red player, you can see a marble on the bottom of these. These are all magnetic. And what happens is you are moving this marble through this labyrinth that you can't see, because once you put them in there, you put it, like I said, you put it face down and you spin the board so you don't know where the walls actually are. If you hit a wall, that marble disconnects from you and comes back down to a corner, and it goes to the next player, and they have to start in their starting spot. So you wouldn't normally end up with like players in the middle of the board like that without like losing their turn, I don't believe, because I think there's only one marble in it from what I remember. I haven't played it for a little while, but this one is a lot of fun. Just trying to remember where you are going, and you are trying to get to a specific spot on the board. So like you have a token or something that is up that tells you which one you are trying to collect. So you've got to get to that spot to collect that one. So you're trying to figure out where things are, and it gets pretty difficult because it's really hard to remember where the walls are. Even if you've gone there, like, okay, I'm here, 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 and then you get really close. You're like, oh my god, there's a wall there. Okay, now wait, which way did I go? So this one is Magic Labyrinth, and this one was a Kinderspiel winner.
I'm terrible at that game.
We both
can't
are.
remember.
We both are.
But that's
But
okay.
it's fun.
It's fun. My next game that I am going to be recommending is a game for 2 players only, and that is Blockus Duo by Mattel, and that came out in 2005. In Blockus Duo, you are just trying not to get trapped. But you are also placing those geometric shapes down. So you have one player who's white, one player who's the black pieces there. And it's a strategy game, and they're kind of like Tetris shaped little pieces that you are trying to lay on the board. The only caveat to placing a piece is that it may not lie adjacent to your other pieces. It can only be touching at the corners.
This picture that I found. I just realized there are illegal moves on here. The blacks and whites are touching each other. The whites are touching each other on sides. So this is not. I just realized this picture I found is not.
That's how to lose the game, is what that is.
Yeah, you can't actually place the pieces, your own pieces side by side to each other. So this is not a legal board. There are a lot of legal stuff on here. And you actually have to place it near yours. So like there's a lot of pieces up here that are not even touching the same color. So this is not a good representation of this game. But
continue on.
yeah.
So your pieces cannot be laying next to each other. They can only be touching at the corners. Um, and it, it can end in two ways. Either one person blocks the other person so that they can't make any other moves, or or a player places all of their pieces legally. Um, it's a fun game. It's a lot of strategy involved on trying to figure out if you're because they have like a one square and then they have bigger pieces and where to lay those bigger pieces first or the smaller pieces second or
Mm,
you know it makes my head curl sometimes, but
it's
I
a
don't do very well at that game
yeah,
either. But I still like it and I still recommend it.
yeah, it's a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun. I'm trying to figure out, and it always gets you when you're like, you think you've blocked someone, like, and I'm just gonna go here and like, oh,
Oh.
I thought you were blocked off, and then all of a sudden they make it through this thing you were like building, and you're like, oh, well that didn't work. Yep, but that
Yeah.
is another fun one. That was actually relatively new to us. We just
Mm-hmm.
learned that one a couple years ago.
I
Um,
get one vision, like I have a goal, I go towards that goal, and I don't even realize what else is on the board half the time, and then I'm just like, oh crap, okay,
yeah,
pulled that out of nowhere. Mm,
that's another fun
mm,
puzzly one.
yeah, hurts my head.
My next game is one of the earlier games that entered in our collection. And this one is a tile laying game that we learned from my parents. And this is Goal by
Mm.
Mindware, which came out in 2006. So we've talked about this one a few times. My brother taught this one to my parents. My parents bought it. My parents taught it to us. We bought it immediately.
And then I bought it for my coworker.
And then you bought it for your coworker and her family. So this one is a tile laying game with big chunky tiles, and what you are doing is you start with 6 in your hand, and then what you are doing is you are when you place them, you either have to place them by the same color or the same shape, or both if you can. And what you're trying to do is when you lay it down, you score points for everything that is connected horizontally and vertically to it. And if you get 6 in a row, it's called a quirkle, so you get the 6 points plus a bonus 6 points. This is just a really fun one. It is one of our most played games. Like I said, when I was looking, this did enter our collection fairly early in our modern gaming. Um, as we were getting into gaming, this was one of our earlier ones. We've talked about this one quite a bit. We really enjoy this one still. It gets out several times a year still. That is Quirkle. The next one is another one that was relatively early on in our modern gaming. And this one is Small World by Days of Wonder,
Mm.
which came out in 2009. In Small World, you are taking on the role of a different um, faction, basically, a different type of person, um, aliens, wizards, whatever it is, along with some sort of ability. It's an area control game. You're trying to control the most space. As you do, you get points at the end. You can get some bonuses depending on which um, race you have and which abilities you have. You can only move next to where you control unless you have some sort of ability that allows you to start in other spaces. Normally, the water isn't available, but there is an ability that allows you to do that. You can add some tunnels. Some of the things allow you to start in the middle of the board, depending on if you have that special ability. Some will allow you to add extra protection. When you battle, you have to have more than the other person. If you don't, you roll a dice and you could possibly gain more. And then each one of them has a certain number of um, tiles you get, which represent your race. So your ability may give you 5, your race may give you 6, so you would get 11 total. It's a really fun game. We don't play it much anymore. We played it quite a bit when we first got into it. I've been playing it on Board Game Arena quite a bit now. It doesn't hit our table really nowadays, but yeah, I really enjoy that one, and that is Small World.
And my next one that I am going to recommend is one of my favorite all time games. I absolutely love this game. If you like party strategy, trivia, slash get up off your butt and play a game, then you will love Dice Capades by Amigo. Came out in 2007. In Dice Capades, it includes a mixture of Dice games, physical challenges, artistic creations where you have to draw and other people have to guess, and trivia questions. And it doesn't just involve the luck of the dice, but it include you have to be somewhat smart, but not really, to answer some of the questions. You have to visit Thinking Town. You have to visit
Action
Action Land,
Land.
and I can't remember the other one.
I can't read it.
Action
Oh,
Thinking
Action,
and
Thinking, and
I can't see that far.
Trivia.
And
Trivia.
how can I forget the trivia?
I don't know.
Oh my gosh! But some of the actions that you can take is stacking these little teeny weeny miniature dice on top of each other in a certain time frame. Um, oh my gosh, who can roll a, the three dice that have the same number the fastest? The trivia, how many state capitals can you name in 30 seconds? It's just all different kinds of questions that you have to answer in order to be able to move your dice. Whoever gets your dice into the middle section first is the winner. So it's pretty easy to do. I always have problems with the drawing part, but it's usually just the two of us when we play it. So we have adapted it to a two-player mode, and we're pretty honest with each other on whether or not the drawings are going to work for what we're guessing or not. One of the actions that I absolutely love is that you have to run from room to room in like 30 seconds.
How many can you get into a certain number of rooms in a certain amount of time?
How many push-ups can you do? I mean, it's just a wacky trivia action game that you have to try and just don't play this one late at night. So we do usually play this one on New Year's Eve. We've moved it to earlier in the day so that you're a little bit more active and thinking a little bit clearer. I really like this game, and there's two versions of it, or maybe there's more by now.
There's some kids versions, but yeah, did you talk about the different dice?
There's all different kinds of dice. I talked about the little teeny tiny ones, but there's dice inside of dice with pictures. You have to write a sentence with something. You have to roll your dice, and then whatever pictures come up, you might have to write a sentence with those. There's
like all sorts of. There's your basic 4, 6, 8, 10.
How many are there?
12 side dice. I don't know. There's
20 different kind of dice or something like that.
16 to 20. Yeah, there's a lot of different types.
There's a lot.
The second version does not have a board. It just has cards, and you can just roll a dice to figure out which one you're doing, and then you first person to collect a certain number of cards. It's just a really fun party game. If you want something that a party game that is going to give you all sorts of different things, that's a huge that's a great one. You're like I said, trivia, action, drawing. I mean, you're doing all sorts of different things in that one. So that one is a fun one. Yeah,
I love that game.
That's a blast. I enjoy that one too. Before I move on, I just wanted to mention I forgot. Quirkle is one of our Spiel des Jahres winners. So Quirkle did win the Game of the Year. So I just wanted to kind of mention which ones were Game of the Year winners. All right, moving on. My next one is another one that is newer to us. It is also, I believe, even though we just got a couple new games in, this is the oldest game on our list that we've played. This one actually came out way back when 19 started the years.
Ooh.
Yes, and this one is For Sale by Eagle Gryphon Games, which came out in 1997. Now, there's been lots of variations of this, so I don't know if Eagle Gryphon specifically did. So we have access to this through my board game club at school as well. I learned this just recently. Another new one that's quite old, a newer one to me at least. Stacey hasn't played it because there's no two-player variant of this. And basically what you're doing is, in this game, it is buying and selling. So the top picture represents the first phase of the game, where this is a 5-player game. So there are 5 cards that are properties put out from numbered 1 to 30. Each person is bidding. So the person on the bid 1. You're bidding on the highest card. The next person bid 2. The next person went really big with 4. The next person went 5. So it would be the first player's turn as well. There's some big numbers up here. They might want to bid, but you only have a certain amount of money to bid. When you stop, when you drop out, you uh, you get half of your money back rounded down, and you take the lowest card in the stack. So if the first player was like, this is too rich for me, I'm going to save my money for the 28, 29, 30, they would drop out. They wouldn't get any money back. They would get the number 3. Let's say the second person drops out. They would get would get 1 coin back, but they would get the 15, and then it would go around. And I just realized I set it up for 5 players when I took this, but I only have 4 people bidding. So there would be a 5th person bidding. So let's say the 5th person didn't want to bid because it was getting too big. They would get the 3. Then the first player could get they could get the number 15 card for that one, and they could say, I'm out. They would lose their 1,000, but they would get that 15 card. And then the next player would get really lucky, and they could say drop out, and they would get half their money back, but they would get the number 21 card. Because I think as the 5th player, I would probably drop out at this point and not bid at all. And then the second phase, once all of the properties have been collected, then you are selling them. So down in the bottom of the screen, there are values 0 to 15,000. There's 2 of each, except for there's no 1,000 in there because there's 2 of the 0 value ones. And what you do is simultaneously now at the same time, you will each pick a card and bid on selling your property. So you can see, and then what it does is the highest card that was played gets the highest value. So you can see there was a 29, so they got the 13,000. The 24 was the second highest card. They got the 11,000. The 1 was the lowest. They got 3,000. This is a really fun game. I've really enjoyed playing this with the kids. I taught it to some people on Board Game Arena. I've played several other games on Board Game Arena of it. So yeah, that is for sale. And my next one is another one that is relatively new to us. It is one that I backed on Kickstarter with the sequel game, but we really like the original. And this is Hanamikoji, and this is by Emperor 54 Games, and this came out in 2013. So some of these games are relatively new to us, but we really are enjoying them. And in Hanamikoji, it is a head-to-head battle. So there's 2 players here, the player on the bottom, the player on the top. And what you are doing is you're bidding for the favor of the 7 geishas. And you do this throughout the game. You start with 6 cards, and then on your turn you draw a new card off of the pile, and you have 4 actions you can do. The first action is to save a card for later for scoring. The second action is to discard 2 cards. The third action is an I cut, you choose. You take 3 cards. Well, you just take 3 cards. Your opponent you put them down. Your opponent takes 1, and you get to put the other 2 on your side. The other one is high cut, you choose. You split them into 2 pairs. You take 4 cards, you split them into 2 pairs, and then your opponent chooses first, and you get the ones that are left. And you put them on your side of the board. And then at the end of the game, at the end of the round, what happens is whoever has the most geishas, so whoever has the most things on their side, they earn the favor of that geisha, and you move the little token, which is on the card in the middle, towards you. Now, there are 2 2s, 3 3s, 4 4s, and 5 5s. And you don't know really you don't know what the person is hidden, and you don't know what they've discarded. So you don't really know what's out there. So you're kind of pushing a little luck as to which things you're going to want to do. So like if you look at the board right now, the bottom player would earn the favor of both the purple and red. The top would get the yellow. The blue, there was a tie. So the favor actually went to the bottom player because that player already had the favor from the previous round. The orangish one went to the top player, the green went to the top, and the pink went to the bottom player. And you play until one person either has the favor of 4 geishas, or someone has 11 glory points, I think is what they call them. And basically what it is if you were to say get like the 5, the 4, and the 2, even if you didn't have the favor of 4 of them, you would actually win as long as the other person didn't have the favor of 4. And I believe the tiebreaker is whoever does have the most points on a thing. And otherwise you play 3 rounds, and then whoever has the favor of most geishas wins. It's a really fun head-to-head battle. We also have the mini expansions, and we played with a couple of those, and those had a nice little variety because they give you 4 new actions to do. So like one of them might be oh, you're discarding one and you're keeping two hidden down, or there was one where everything was face up. There was one where everything was face down. Like you had all this stuff that was face down. You had no idea what was going on. There was only a couple cards that were actually being shown. So it was a lot of fun. There's like 7 mini expansions, so it just adds a little bit of variety. That is Hanami Koji by Emperor 54 Games.
I like that game.
It is a lot of fun.
My next game is, I don't know if it's my favorite Grandpa Beck's game, but it's up there. Normally, I know that I've talked about this before, if you've watched before. I'm not a trick-taking kind of gal for gaming. But this one, because it's played in a different way, is a lot more fun to me. And so this is Skull King by Grandpa Beck Games from 2013. Now, Skull King, like I've said, is a trick-taking game where the player is needing to state how many tricks you're going to be taking or how many they think they're going to be winning. The unique element of this game is that bidding takes place simultaneously, leading to rounds that are sometimes bid over, you sometimes bid under, and as players win, you have to have the exact number of tricks in order to earn the points. Winning too many tricks is just as bad as winning too few, and leads to a competition where a trick can be as exciting as, losing one can be just as exciting as winning one, because you're like, yes, I didn't get my tricks, but you know what,
I bid correctly.
I bid correctly, so that's all I needed to do. Now in this, you can see that now this is where I get bad at explaining games, but
there's 3 main suits.
Yes.
The purple, the green, and the yellow. Those all have the same priority. It's just whichever one is played first. Then you have your black suit, which is your Jolly Roger. That one will always beat any of the other ones, and it will beat higher value ones. Then you have your red pirates, which will beat the Jolly Rogers, because pirates are better than the Jolly Rogers. There's only 5 of those in the game, though. So those will beat everything else, except for the Skull King. The Skull King beats everything, including the pirates. You also have this Tiger's card, which has a surrender flag or a pirate, which can be played as either. The boats, the surrender ones, those are really good, because if you don't want to win a trick because you bid low and you're like, oh, I've already got my tricks, I don't want to win, you can play a surrender and you automatically lose that trick. The Tigers, like I said, can be played as either. There's also some other special cards in the newer version. I think there's some mermaids and a white whale and maybe a kraken that do some other, like the white that like beat the Skull King, like the mermaids beat the Skull King, I think. And then you can see the 14s. If you win a trick with the 14, you get extra points. So those are the main parts without the extra cards that make it for the advanced game.
But the thing I really do like about this is that you have to say how many tricks you think you're gonna win at the same time. So I usually try and shoot for under, but it's not always a good strategy.
When you're playing with fewer players, you want to try and overbid, because there's only 2 or 3 of you playing. When you're playing with more players, you want to try and underbid, because there's a lot more players that have cards out there. So it is a very interesting take on trick taking, because you do have to say how many tricks you're going to take. It like, okay, I'm going to take 3 of these 4, and if you don't, then you get less points. So yeah, it is a fun game. And then you can also bid 0.
Yes.
And if you bid 0 and take 0 tricks, you get the number points. Well, it depends on what round it is. It's 10 times whatever round it is. So in round 1 it's 10 points, but in round 10 it's 100 points. If you could, in round 10, when you have 10 cards in your hand, because every round you get that many cards to start with. So in round 10, if you have 10 cards and you say, I'm going to take 0 tricks, and you do, you get 100 points, which could be huge at the end of the game. It's very risky, but if you had a bunch of low numbers, you'd be like, oh yeah, I can lose all these. So that is a good one. That's our second Grandpa Beck's in this video, because I started with Cover Your Assets.
Oh, yes it is.
All right. My next game is another classic tile laying game. It is another Spiel winner. It's our second of 3 Spiel winners on this list. And this one is the one where the word meeple was created by a fan. And this is Carcassonne by Hans im Gluck. This came out in 2000. So the really cool thing about Carcassonne is there is no board. There is a starting tile, and everybody, you don't even have a set of tiles in your hand to choose from. You take the top tile off of the pile and you place it down where it can go. Now you have to place things, cities to cities, fields to fields, roads to roads, and then you can place a meeple down. And I can officially say meeple because these guys are the ones that have the trademark on.
Oh,
Yeah. And so when you place it down, you are trying to score. So you can see the red one at the top. They placed it on this city. They've got a pretty big city right now. Nobody else can place a tile down and claim that city. So if that person can close off that city during the game, they get 2 points for every tile, plus 2 points for each one of those shields. Now, someone could swoop in on this city, though. So if someone were to put a tile where that red meeple is up one and to the left that has a city that is to the right of that on the tile, they could place it there with the field with a city that's near it. And if they could connect the city to that other city, now they're both in the city. So there are ways of kind of swooping in on somebody else's city that they're building really, really big. And obviously, you know what, I'm just gonna place this here. Oh wait, then I'm gonna connect them later. Now we are both in this large city and we both score. On the roads, when both ends of the road are closed off, you get 1 point per tile. The green player in the bottom middle there is on an abbot. So what happens there is when that is completely surrounded, you get 1 point for every tile around it, including that tile, so you can get 9 points. Then you see a blue meeple that is laying down. So that never comes back to you. So when you score the abbots, I think they're called abbots or monasteries, the roads and the cities, you get your meeple back to use later because you only score where your meeples are. The farmer, which is that blue meeple that is laying down, that scores at the end of the game. And that scores for every city that is completed that is connected to that field. You can, like I said, you can never have a second meeple in that one unless it connects later. So this is just a really fun one. This is a classic tile laying game. Really unique with the way that you lay it out and you have no board. It just keeps on going around. So that is Carcassonne. And my final game is another tile laying game. This is a polyomino tile laying game all about making a quilt. And this is Patchwork by Lookout Games, and this came out in 2014. So in Patchwork, you have this rondelle of pieces. You have a little mover that starts clockwise in front of the smallest piece. You start with some buttons, which is your currency, and you're moving around this board in the middle as well. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to fill your quilt up. And as you do that, each one of them has a time mechanism on them that says you how far you move and also how much it costs. Then some of them have buttons on them which you can earn. So on the board in the middle where you are moving around, when you pass a space that has a button on it, you get to gain buttons back which help you buy more patches. Now, if you can't buy anything, you can always move one space ahead of your opponent and you get buttons for the number of spaces you moved. Then there's also some spaces when you pass them, you can get these individual single 1x1 patches to fill in spaces. And if you are the first person to fill in a 7x7 square, you get the bonus grid. This is another one that I think was fairly early in our collection, and this one is a lot of fun. We really enjoy playing this one. It is a puzzle we've never come close to. Well, I don't want to say we've never come close to filling it, but we've never filled it. We've had a few spaces. This is a game where when you first start playing it, it is very easy to score negative points because at the end of the game, you score 1 point for every button you have, but you lose 2 points for every space that's open. So if you've got a lot of spaces open because you couldn't take anything at the end or you moved ahead too many times without taking patches, you can end up with some negative points and some very low scores. But it's a really fun one. And that is Patchwork.
And my last one of the evening is a Stacey Wilshbein winner.
It's a spiel. This is a spiel. This is our third spiel winner.
Stacey Wilshbein winner.
Okay, this is our third spiel this Yaris winner for Game of the Year.
Funny. Okay. That was stupid. Okay, so my last game of the evening is Ticket to Ride, the original version by Days of Wonder from 2004. In Ticket to Ride, you are trying to collect cards of various types of trains that you are going to use to claim railway routes throughout the United States. There are other maps of other countries that maybe one day we'll do like a whole Ticket to Ride experience ranking or something like that. But in this one, the longer the routes that you collect, the more points that you get. And the additional points come to those who fulfill your destination ticket. So when you start the game, I believe you pick 5 and you have to keep 3 of your destination tickets.
On this version, yes.
Yes. And so the goal of the cards is to connect those cities if you can. And the player who builds the longest continuous route gets the bonus. There's a bonus card for your longest continuous route. And this game is simple enough to be taught very quickly to new gamers. And it's got enough playability to keep players who are like heavy gamers involved in the game, I think. So, depending on how many people you have, if you only have 2 players, you can't use the side-by-side routes.
2 and 3.
2 and 3. Okay, you can't use the side-by-side routes. If you have more than 3 players, then you can use the side-by-side routes, and it kind of opens up the map a little bit more so that you can get your trains to go to your destination a little bit quicker. With the 2-player, you can kind of block somebody off a little bit easier and make them go around the long way, which really irks me when people do that. But it's part of the game, and you just
we don't use it.
We try not to do
We've
that.
talked about this numerous times. We do not hate play because that's not enjoyable for either of us. The only way we end up blocking each other is if we have to actually go in that location, and you're like, this is gonna block them, but I need to go there, and that's the easier way for me to go. So that is really what we do. But there's a lot of blocking and stuff in this game that some people do, depending on who you play with.
So in Ticket to Ride, you have your destination cards where you have to go across, but you also have different colors of patterns that you have to lay down. And there's anywhere from 1 train that you need up to, I think it's 9 to 11.
In the original, I think it's 6 or 7. Some of the other maps.
Yeah, look at that big one down here at the bottom. How many is that?
6.
Is that it?
These only have 6. The highest on the original map is 6.
Okay, it's 6.
There are some much larger ones in some other maps.
So with the longer ones that you lay down, laying down 6 trains is worth how many points?
1 is 1.2 is 2, 3 is 4, 4 is 7, 5 is 10, 6 is 15.
There you go.
I believe is what it is.
So if you can, lay down the longer routes, but you need to have that many cards, or you can collect the wild cards as well to complete that out to get your route down. And if you have your cards laid out in front of you, if you take a wild card, you only get to take 1 card. If you take 2 colored cards, then you get to draw each turn, and you get to take 2 cards each turn. However, if you draw a wild, then you only get to take 1.
If you draw one that's face up.
Yes.
You could get lucky. There's a face down pile. If you get a wild off the face down pile, you are lucky because nobody knows you got a wild. And you still get a second card. You cannot take the wild then that is face up, because once you take 1 card, you can't take the wild.
So the person with the most points at the end of the game wins, and that includes the longest. You add up your points from laying down the trains, and then you do the longest route, and then you get to add your points in for how many destinations you completed. If you don't complete a destination, you get subtracted those points. So it's very important you complete your destination cards. I really like this game, and I like a lot of the versions that we have with it. The only thing that kind of, if you want the expansions, you need that base game cards in order to play the expansions.
Yes.
So you have to kind of start with the base game and then work your way up so that you have the cards.
Either Ticket to Ride or Ticket to Ride Europe you will need in order to play a lot of the expansion maps. Some of those are fun.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
So
Ticket to Ride. This is the game. This is the gateway game. This is the game that brought us into the hobby when we were visiting Stacey's parents. There's a little shop there that has toys and kids' clothes and puzzles and games and candy and all sorts of stuff. It's a really fun little shop, and we would always go in there and we would always look at the games, but we weren't really into board gaming. But then we kind of were looking like, some of these look kind of fun, and we were kind of looking for some stuff to do. And went back, I watched the video on Ticket to Ride. I'm like, this looks like it could be interesting for us. I showed Stacey the video. I'm like, what do you think? Should we pick up a game to play that could give us something to do? And that was the game that brought us into the modern board gaming world.
Even my dad played, which is saying a lot because he's not a board gamer at all.
After we left, her mom went and bought a copy for herself to play with her friends.
Yep.
That is Ticket to Ride. I mean, it is a gateway game. Said it is the one that brought us into the modern hobby. It is still one we enjoy playing. We have almost every version, and we have all the city versions. I'm sure you will see some of those coming up on upcoming yearly things because we do really enjoy them. Yeah, so there you have our list. A lot of these are considered gateway games at this point because this really is kind of the early years of modern board gaming and stuff. So a lot of really fun games, a lot of different types. So let us know if you've played any of these games. Let us know what your favorite games from pre-2020 2015. What are some of your favorite games from pre-2015? I know a lot of people that might be watching this have been into the gaming hobby a lot more, but are there some that you think we would enjoy from pre-2015? We don't know a whole lot about a lot of them. But yeah, so there you have our 5 and 10 recommendations for pre-2015 games that we really enjoy playing. Yeah.
That's it.
Once again, this has been Where There's Wills.
There's a play.
I'm Ian.
I'm Stacey.
And we'll see you next time.
At the table.